Have you ever caught yourself waiting for someone or something to finally make your life feel better? Maybe you are waiting for your partner to become more supportive, your boss to recognize your potential, your circumstances to become easier, or motivation to arrive and pull you forward. Without realizing it, we can spend years believing that once the right person, opportunity, or feeling appears, we will finally become happier, stronger, or more fulfilled. But there is an uncomfortable truth that can also be incredibly empowering. No one else can take responsibility for building your life. If you enjoy science-based ideas that help you understand your mind and create a calmer, stronger life, please subscribe to Clever Girl Academy, where we turn psychology, neuroscience, and personal development into practical strategies you can actually use. One of the strongest reminders in the original conversation is that you are responsible for your own happiness, for the energy you bring, and for the way you show up. At first, that can sound harsh, especially when life has handed you circumstances you never chose. There are experiences, losses, disadvantages, and other people's decisions that are absolutely not your responsibility. Taking ownership of your life does not mean pretending that everything that happened to you was your fault. Responsibility begins somewhere else. It begins with recognizing that even when you did not choose what happened, you still have choices about what happens next. Psychologists often describe this through the idea of an internal locus of control. The more we recognize the areas in which our own actions can influence outcomes, the more likely we are to act instead of remaining completely dependent on external circumstances. That does not mean you can control everything. You cannot control whether someone approves of you, whether an opportunity works out, or whether life suddenly becomes difficult. But you can influence the effort you bring, the skills you build, the boundaries you set, the conversations you initiate, and the direction in which you take your next step. And this is where responsibility stops feeling like blame and starts becoming power. If somebody else is responsible for creating your happiness, you must wait for them to change. If your circumstances are entirely responsible for your future, you must wait for circumstances to change. But the moment you identify even one part that belongs to you, waiting is no longer your only option. You may not be able to redesign your entire life today. You can, however, ask one powerful question: what is mine to do next? That question does not deny what has happened. It simply refuses to let what happened make every decision about where you go from here. There is a subtle way we can give away our power without realizing it. We keep waiting for someone else to provide the thing we desperately want. We wait for encouragement before believing in an idea, for recognition before trusting our abilities, for an apology before allowing ourselves to move forward, or for somebody to finally understand what we need before we begin taking those needs seriously ourselves. The waiting can feel justified, especially when another person genuinely should have shown up differently, but it can also leave your life emotionally dependent on decisions you cannot control. This is why taking responsibility is not the same as saying, "I should have done everything alone." Human beings need support, connection, and help, and asking for those things is not weakness. The problem begins when support becomes a prerequisite for movement, because then another person's willingness to change can quietly determine whether your own life is allowed to change. Imagine two circles. In the first are all the things you cannot directly control: other people's opinions, their choices, the past, unexpected events, and whether someone gives you the response you hoped for. In the second are the things you can influence: where you place your attention, what you practice, what you tolerate, what you ask for, what you learn, and what action you take next. Stress often grows when we spend enormous amounts of energy trying to manage the first circle while neglecting the second. Self-efficacy, a concept strongly associated with psychologist Albert Bandura, describes our belief that our actions can influence what happens in our lives. That belief does not appear magically. It grows through experience. Every time you solve a problem, learn a skill, survive a difficult conversation, or take action despite uncertainty, you collect evidence that you can affect what happens next. This is why even small decisions matter. Booking the appointment instead of thinking about it for another month matters. Asking the uncomfortable question matters. Learning something you once believed you could not understand matters. Saying no where you previously abandoned yourself matters. None of these actions guarantees the outcome you want, but each one moves you from waiting into participation. You can still wish someone had supported you better. You can acknowledge unfair circumstances and accept help when it's available. Responsibility does not require denying any of that. It simply means refusing to make your future entirely dependent on whether the world eventually gives you what it should have given you already. Sometimes the most empowering realization is not that you can control your whole life, but that you were never as powerless as waiting made you feel. There is a moment in personal growth when responsibility stops feeling like pressure and begins to feel like freedom. It happens when you realize that taking ownership of your life does not require having all the answers. You do not need to know exactly where you will be 5 years from now, how every problem will be solved, or whether every decision will work. You simply need to stop handing the next move entirely to circumstances, other people, or a future version of yourself. This is important because responsibility can easily become another impossible standard. You may hear your happiness is your responsibility and translate it into I should be able to fix everything, but that is not the point. You will still need other people. You will still have difficult days, need rest, ask for help, and sometimes have no idea what to do next. Taking responsibility means that when you notice something in your life is no longer working, you become willing to participate in changing it. Sometimes that participation looks surprisingly small. It may mean admitting that a situation you have tolerated for years is costing you too much. It may mean learning a new skill before you feel qualified, asking for support instead of hoping someone notices you are struggling, or finally making a decision you have been postponing because neither option feels perfect. Responsibility is rarely one heroic act. More often, it is a series of ordinary choices that gradually move your life in a different direction. And those choices change more than your circumstances. They change the story you tell yourself about who you are. Every time you act on your own behalf, you reinforce the idea that your needs matter. Your decisions have influence, and your future is something you can participate in creating. You stop seeing yourself only as the person things happen to and begin seeing yourself as someone who can respond, adapt, and choose. So when something feels wrong in your life, try replacing "why isn't this changing" with "what part of this can I influence?" Maybe the answer is 5%. Maybe it's one conversation, one boundary, one application, or one decision. 5% may not sound dramatic, but it is infinitely more powerful than 0. You are not responsible for controlling every outcome, carrying everything alone, or turning every difficult chapter into a positive experience. You are responsible for recognizing where your choices begin. That is where your power lives. Because nobody else can build your life for you. People can support you, teach you, love you, and walk beside you, but the next step still belongs to you. And perhaps that is not a burden. Perhaps it is one of the most hopeful things you could ever realize. If you enjoy science-based ideas that help you understand your mind and create a calmer, stronger life, please subscribe to Clever Girl Academy, where we turn psychology, neuroscience, and personal development into practical strategies you can actually use.